Pokemon Legends ZA was admittedly a bit controversial. Going into the game, a lot of people loved it, and a lot of people didn't. There really wasn't a lot of middle opinions on the game. I had a wonderful time. Out the gate, I'm not going to bury that lead. But there is genuine criticism the game should and can receive. But my biggest question is, how is the game in retrospect? When the game first came out, all of us were excited to look at the new Pokemon, get the new Megas, explore Lumiose in a way we never have before. But now that we've all played it, is it still any good? One of the biggest things about Pokemon games for me is replayability. It's why, even though I think technically Pokemon Scarlet Violet on the Switch 2 is my favorite Pokemon game, because it takes one of my favorite games and gets rid of all the performance issues, I can't say it's my favorite, because it's not very replayable. I really hate to say that, because on the face of it, it should be. Looking at this game, it's open world. You can do things any order you want. You can go anywhere you want. You're pretty much, the world is your oyster once the game starts. But there's two major drawbacks. And the first one is that the game doesn't really start for like an hour and a half. I love the world building of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. I love the story. I love its characters. I love everything about that. But to get to the point where you have the open world and you can explore it at your leisure, it's like literally, I want to say close to 2 hours of the exact same tutorial every time. You boot up the game, you go through your unskippable talking cutscenes. You start on your first route. Okay, a little bit of freedom. You're on your first route. You get to catch some Pokemon. Then you have another series of unskippable talking cutscenes. You look at the school from a distance, and then you get your first mini area. And this is fun. This is like, you get little snippets of gameplay, and then more schooling cutscenes that take like a half hour. It's a whole thing that, to really start the game, it just takes like a good hour and a half, which sucks. I just wish I could start when you have your legendary bike guy and can just go wherever you want. It's why I don't think I'm ever going to do like Nuzlocke of it, because I just don't want to have to redo that first part every single time. But enough about Scarlet Violet. This is about Legends ZA. But just looking back on Legends ZA, how does it hold up versus the rest of the series? And starting off, I think genuinely the most drastic change is the battle system. Having Pokemon battles happen in real time is genuinely one of the most fun ways I've done a Pokemon battle. I think it's one of the smartest iterations of Pokemon battling we've gotten in a long time. Now, I don't know if I like it more or less than traditional Pokemon battling. I think they're just about neck and neck, but I had such a good time with the battle system in Legends ZA. It reminds me of Ni no Kuni 1 in the best way. Having your, sending out different minions and having them fight and react and move around accordingly. It is occasionally clunky, especially with the environment around you. Like if you want them to like do some sort of move and they get caught on a bench and then just miss. But for the most part, it's very fun and very rewarding to get good at. And it also gives you a lot more reason to use status moves in non-competitive Pokemon. Because I'm going to be super honest, Pokemon games are, at the end of the day, kids games. They are quite easy. That's why Nuzlocking exists. That's why challenge runs exist. And outside of a competitive format, I've never really seen the use of like a Swords Dance or, a Thunder Wave. It can get you out of a sticky situation, but 9 times out of 10 in the base Pokemon game, if you just use the right type advantage, you're gonna win, right? But in Legends ZA, now that there is timers associated with your moves and it's not necessarily turn-based, those status moves are a lot more important. Because when you're waiting for the cooldown of your better attacks, you still have time to do stuff. So you can have them throw out that first move, and then while they're waiting for the cooldown, use a Swords Dance, power them up. Then do another one. While they're waiting for both cooldowns, use a Thunder Wave. It makes sense, and it makes them function a lot better. The other thing that makes ZA different is the progression. The ZA Royale. And I'm of two minds of it. On one hand, I think doing the ZA Royale is very fun. I think the amount of times we do the ZA Royale in-game is about the perfect amount of times. I have seen plenty of criticisms, and I think it is kind of silly. I do agree with them to a point, that the whole point of this game is that we're going from rank Z to rank A. And then once you get to, like, spoilers, rank W, you just zip up to, like, rank F immediately. And you skip, like, 20 plus letters of the alphabet for story reasons. That is kind of frustrating. But at the same time, I think forcing the player to do 26 individual rank ups would have gotten old. I think you could have written the story in a way that you don't need to be rank infinite or rank A or whatever to continue the story. If they wrote it so you could still progress the story while progressing the Royale, and then leave like the latter half of the alphabet for the post game, I think that's perfect, and it makes perfect sense, and it lines up wonderfully. I don't know why they didn't just do that. I guess because they wanted every player to feel accomplished in getting to the top of the Royale. But again, like, the wish wasn't that important to the story. They could have easily wrote it out and just had it so, you know, this new trainer is the one who like happened to save the town, and you're only rank M, and it's crazy, you know? And then you can have your player, you know, you open up the post game, it's like, well, you're still only rank M, there's plenty of ways to go. And then that way, you know, you can have rebattles later on because other people would be doing the ZA2 in the background. It just makes sense. I don't know why they didn't do that, but arguably it's a nitpick at best, because the actual gameplay of the ZA Royale is quite fun. It's fun to optimize it. It can definitely get repetitive, and I think if we had to do all 26 in the story, it would have felt repetitive to have to do them. But the way that I find the ZA Royale doesn't get too repetitive is if you're really optimizing it. Like, if you're just wandering around and attacking trainers, it can probably get a little stale, but it's really fun to go for high scores in the Royale. And that's the most fun I have in this game, frankly, is optimizing my play, optimizing what cards I'm using, optimizing what battles I'm picking and what Pokemon I'm leading with to get a high score. And that's what I'm really enjoying with that gameplay. I think it's time to move on to some pros and cons about the game. And to start with that, with pros, we gotta talk about the story. The Legends ZA story, genuinely, one of the best stories Pokemon has written. The characters are incredibly fun and memorable. The actual plot of the game makes sense with the lore of XY without ruining anything or making anything too weird. It feels like a natural follow-up to XY, and spoilers, it feels like a wonderful send-off to AZ. What a weird character. But also, what a bold choice for a Pokemon game to have a like literal tombstone 10 seconds before the credits. Like, that takes guts for a Pokemon game. And I know it's a side game and they can get a little more like intense about it, but I'm actually genuinely pleasantly surprised they actually killed him off. I did not expect them to go that route. But going into the pros of Legends ZA, like I mentioned, the battle system, ZA Royale, super fun. And the characters, super fun. Other pros for Legends ZA, the new Megas, always hype. I think Mega Evolution is such a fun mechanic that genuinely, I wouldn't mind if that was just the gimmick moving forward. Is that Mega Evolution's always there. Of the gimmicks that have been introduced, which off the top of my head would be what? Mega Evolution, Z moves, Gigantamaxing, and Terastallization. Of those, I think it's, I rank Mega Evolution as like tied with Terastallization. And the only reason being able to Terra your Pokemon into a different type is a really good mechanic for strategy, and I like that you can do it with any Pokemon. My real complaint with the Mega Evolution is you can't do it with every Pokemon, and some Pokemon desperately need one, you know? So I think if there were more Mega Evolutions, maybe the rank would be a bit higher, but as it stands, I do really like Mega Evolutions, and of the new Mega Evolutions introduced in ZA, all of them are hits. Not one of them missed. I loved every single one of them. And most of them I think were well needed. You know, like Pokemon like Drampa getting a well-needed boost. Pokemon like Dragalge getting a well-needed boost. I have heard the complaint that you would rather a Pokemon get a new evolution because that's permanent, and then the next game that does a Mega Evolution, the Pokemon that got new Megas are back to square one. And I get that, but at this point, I just want Pokemon who need it to get it, you know? So if there's a fully evolved Pokemon, I want them to get a Mega, because they really need one. And to be fair, with the precedent of Mega Floette, we can't technically rule out Pokemon who are not a 3-stage evolution getting a Mega, never getting an evolution again. We can't rule it out. And now you could argue it's only for Floette for story reasons, and I get that, but we technically can't rule that out. And it might seem little, it might seem small. Another pro for this game I love is the clothing choices. There are so many clothing options and none of them are gender locked. It really lets you fully customize your character and kind of put yourself in the game or put your OC in the game in a way that feels good. And after Scarlet and Violet, fuck was that needed. The DLC gave us decent options and decent clothes, but we had to wear a goddamn school uniform with like 3 options for different seasons, and that was it. So go from that to ZA feels like a breath of fresh air. Now, admittedly, I've been glazing ZA for like 10 minutes. Are there cons? Yes. I think one of my biggest complaints about Legends ZA is the lack of diverse environments. I get the concept that we're in Lumiose the whole time, and I understand that the different wild areas do feel different and have different layouts and have different environments, but there's only so much you can do staying in a city for the entire game. And they did their damnedest. They really stretched that and like milked that city for all they could to get as many diverse environments within Lumiose as they possibly could. But I don't know, man. I'm a sucker for a mountain and a real cave and going underwater. Like, you know, like I'm a sucker for real environments. So being in Lumiose the whole time, it was better than I expected it to be, but it still wasn't great. I didn't love it. I mean, you look at Legends Arceus with all of its environments, you look at the trailer for Winds and Waves with the environments we look like we're getting, and then you look at Lumiose and it's just a city with some nice parks in it. Another con, I think, for the game is the long, unskippable cutscenes. Like I mentioned, my biggest gripe with Scarlet Violet is it takes like an hour and a half to start the game. It's not as bad in ZA. You actually start a little bit sooner, but the story in Legends ZA is kind of the forefront of the game, and it's a lot of long, unskippable cutscenes. The gameplay in between those cutscenes is really solid, but those cutscenes are long and you cannot skip through them. I don't understand how we're in 2026. And I mean, this game came out last year, but Pokemon Company is still releasing games with unskippable cutscenes. And the worst part is they do a half measure. They're like, oh yeah, you can skip cutscenes, and then you play Sword and Shield, and there's 2 cutscenes in the entire game to let you skip. And then there's still mountains of the like text box dialogue cutscenes that you can't skip. And that's really what I'm talking about, because these cutscenes aren't like cutscenes. You have to physically click through the dialogue. I guess it's considered gameplay, but because of that, you can't skip through them. I love Legends ZA. I don't know if I'm ever going to replay its story. I think if I want to play more of it, I'm going to do some of the DLC, and I'm going to do some ZA Royale, because to replay the actual campaign of Legends ZA is going to involve a couple hours worth of just clicking through the dialogue boxes that I've already read. And I don't like that. You know what? I've said it before, I'll say it again. Voice acting would go a long way in making these games more fun to play like that. Because if you had voice acting, then you could have characters talk while you're doing gameplay and have the story be delivered while your player is doing something. Look at Borderlands 2 as a perfect example of this versus Borderlands 1. Borderlands 2, one of my favorite games of all time. Borderlands 1, it's alright. I've played it, it's fun. I, to this day, don't really know the story of Borderlands 1 because it is only really delivered to you through the text boxes on the accepted missions. You have to read the like full paragraphs of text on the mission page to get the story. And I'm not doing that, dude. I'm not gonna do that. So, how do they remedy this? Well, in Borderlands 2, you accept the mission. There's like a tagline, a couple sentences, maybe a paragraph. But once you accept the mission, as you're headed there, the characters in the story are talking about what's going on the way and while you're fighting. So you get the story while you're playing the game. And if Pokemon had voice acting, they could do the same thing. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox, but like, come on. I do want to bring up, and this is a criticism I've seen way too much, frankly. But if I didn't address it here, people would ask me. I'm gonna be so real. Maybe it's because I'm a Nintendo fanboy. Maybe I've got low standards. I don't know. I don't give a shit about the fact that the windows are like a PNG. I don't care. I'm sorry. Maybe this is me showing my dirty consumerism or whatever. But like the game looks fine to me. The models look cute and the Pokemon look cute, and that's all I really care about. The city itself, it looks fine. Could it look better? Yes. Would it be nice to be able to go into the buildings and double the amount of space we're doing? Yeah. But like, I never once was playing the game and like got distracted about how bad the windows looked. I don't care. I really don't. Winds and Waves looks better. Hopefully they're gonna look better moving forward. I want for more, but it doesn't negatively affect me, frankly. And maybe that's saying more about me than the game. So my final verdict on Legends ZA, yeah, game's pretty great. I absolutely adore this game. Of the 2 Legends games we've gotten, I think Legends Arceus is still a much better full package of a game. But Legends ZA is loads of fun, at least on the Switch 2, as a big caveat there. I've never played Legends ZA on the Switch 1, so I can't say how well it runs or if there's any like bugs or anything. As far as playing it on the Switch 2, Legends ZA is a treat and I absolutely enjoyed it. And I do think it was worth the hype, to answer that thumbnail question. But until next time, as always, you've been watching RyeTwost. Of all the YouTube channels, it's the second one. Stay toasty, slices.